This is George Garzone and Coffee Talk.
Hey everybody, I'm Kim Perlack. I'm the chair of the guitar department, Berklee College of Music, and welcome to another Coffee Talk. We're joined as usual by our assistant chair, Cheryl Bailey.
Hey there, I'm double fisted. I got some coffee, but I also have some water, so I'm just trying to be balanced today, you know?
I like that. I like that you're old school with the guitar department mug. I am
Oh
too.
yeah.
The black
Well,
one.
anyone you could see it on YouTube, but
Yeah, and we've got Ben Cody with us, our senior coordinator, as usual. Hey Ben.
Hello.
Hey, and today our special guest is George Garzone, professor of woodwinds, and our friend from here at Berkeley. Hey George.
How are you?
George, are you a coffee drinker?
Yes, I had some this morning just to
Okay.
get going. After 2 days of teaching at Berkeley, I need a jump start. But I'm good. I'm totally fine. You
What do
know,
you do? Like, what is your coffee routine or style? What do you have?
Believe it or not, I,
Yeah.
I like the basic Nescafe Classico, and that's a regular thing you buy at the supermarket. But I have two um, espresso machines. One is like the one Jerry Bergonzi has, this huge thing, and then I have a Nespresso. It's like a one shot, and I think they're both. I kind of go in between. I'm not like a coffee fancier. I'm kind of basic. You know, so I just kind of jump back and forth.
Nice. Um, the other main question we ask people as they kind of settle in is about first days at Berkeley. And I think this is kind of interesting because you've taught at Berkeley now for 50 years, like 50 years. And is there something you remember about when you first came that stands out to you?
Teaching or as a student or
I think it could be either way because a lot of people listening to this are students who are just coming to Berkeley and or faculty who have just started, and so any one of your first days that starts out to you, I think would be cool to hear about a little bit.
well, I went here in '68, and because my uncle Rocco knew Joe Viola, I was able to study with Joe, who was like the god of the saxophone. I got a 2 year jump because they did a little Goomba thing, and I was able to study with him at Berkeley while I was still in high school. And my mother still complaining until the day she died that she had to pay $6 for a half-hour lesson. And so I got a little jump, but then the day I walked into Berkeley, it was so eye-opening because the people I went to school with were, Joe Lovano, Kenny Warner, Billy Drews, Jamie Haddad, Skoll, and all the different people. And it was really an eye-opening thing for me because it made me realize how little I knew as
Mm.
far as, the real deal, you know. Um, so I would just tag along, and that's what I tell the students too. Like I was very basic, and just taking like um, John Laporta's course and Ted Pease. These guys who, they were really instrumental in letting me know what I didn't know. And I always remember Ted Pease. I did a four-horn chart on The Man I Love, and I can still see it. And he gave me an F in red pencil, the red pencil, and he wrote underneath, Garzone, please stick to improvisation. And he was right. So that was pretty eye-opening. So, like going through Berkeley and hanging with these cats that were playing much further than myself, I was able to tag along, and kind of get my act together. So, I mean, Berkeley was really good for me in terms of understanding what I needed to do. And I always tell this, my students, look, if I can do it, you can do it. Because when I walked in here, it was pretty frightening to how little I knew. But the hip thing about the school, even when I went, they started in a basic format, like right with the Ionian scale and the modes, and these were things that I really needed, and it helped me to really get my act together and further. I mean, then years later, how I ended up playing free avant-garde with the Fringe still mystifies me, to go from zero to interstellar space, it's a mind blow. Even today, I mean, the band has been together, like you all know, for 53 years, and it's still going. People are still coming down, and the music is moving forward. And there's no other band that's been together this long. I look at us like the Rolling Stones of jazz. Because it's hard to group. Kids say, "Well, how do you keep a group together?" If I'm going blah blah, cut me off, okay?
No, you keep going.
All right,
Yeah.
cool. And they were like, "Well, how do you keep the group together?" It's like, how do you keep a group together? Don't try. I mean, it got to a point when Gullotti was there, where what are you going to say every week? Oh, how you doing? That's about it. And then we'd go cuckoo for an hour and a half, So this is, for many reasons why I stayed in Boston, because A, I'm from here, as you can hear. B, Berklee for me was of all the places I taught. And then Cheryl and I were roommates down in New York with Claire Daly and Ingrid, right? I remember Claire said, "Oh, you need a place to stay?" And I said, "Yeah, if you're cool." I only come down once a week to teach at Manus College and NYU. And so I got the room with all these, really great women players, like Ingrid, Claire, and Cheryl. And I was like, wow, this was my introduction to New York, teaching down there. A lot of history down there for me. But I mean, I knew in the end that, it would be Berklee would be the place to stay, because even when I was going to school, I watched Lee Burke and how he ran the business, and I'm not really a business person, but you don't need to be a rocket scientist to figure out, where the forefront is as far as, what people are doing in music. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. Yeah.
Any questions?
Yeah, I mean, I have questions, but I also see Cheryl nodding and smiling a lot. So, Cheryl, why don't you jump in there? And
Well, there's so many things that I would love to talk to you about. But one thing, actually, when you brought up that time when we met in New York, your you would get up and run early in the morning, and you'd play a gig all night, and you'd knock on my door, and at like 6 in the morning or something, and we'd go for a run on the pier. And and getting to know you over the years, I know that you've gotten into Zen sword and this kind of thing. So, and that to me, when I think of you, you have this presence and physicality and stamina about your playing, and your attention span and all of this. Like you get so fully present when you play, and the way you transform a room and you transform a band. I know anytime I get the opportunity to play with you, I feel like the downbeat hits, and the next thing I know, I'm waking up at the end of the set. Like, where did you go? You have this ability to just transform things, and I feel so much that's tied. And I know that, for instance, that practice of the Zen sword is still a big part of your life. So just I don't know if you would talk about that a little bit, but also what you could share to our listeners and the students about this connection between developing this type of presence, being in the moment, being able to, I'm sure all the things that you've worked on over the years, definitely with the Zen sword stuff, has brought that into your playing, and how can people connect with that, if that makes any sense?
Well, when I was a kid, I don't know if you're probably too young to remember. David Carradine was in Kung Fu. So I was only about like 12, and I'm a big TV person, and in fact, I was just playing for my global jazz people this tune I wrote called Simple, which is a combination of all the sitcoms we used to watch, like Andy of Mayberry and My Favorite Martian, and I wrote this tune based off of all of that, and when you hear it, it's great. But watching David Carradine while he was, this about this, Asian person that comes to California, and these guys, think they're going to rough him up, and he takes care of them. But what I'm getting at is while he was going through the thing, my body was like kicking, doing this, and I'm only 12. I'm like, what the hell is going on, right? Come to find later that there was a place right above Stevie's Pizza. It was called the Shim Gum Do Center. And this place kept calling me, and I get a vibe. So I went up there one day, and I met the master, and he changed my life. And it was something that I was destined to do. And then they moved to Brighton. They were on like 203 Chestnut Hill Ave. I don't know if you've ever seen the Red Church. It's up on the corner, And I followed him, and I got about 2 or 3 years out of it before, I stopped, and I was starting to run around, blah blah blah. But he was so instrumental, and he loved the Fringe so much that he can help me to connect the Zen with the Fringe. In fact, he would be like, Garzone, you bring your band down, you play. And we would go down and play in this church, and he would get so worked up that when we hit a high point, he would jump on the big gong and just like, But he was instrumental in helping me to understand how to further my playing, through meditation and, just doing that form, and it's something that was destiny for me, and I think I'm still above ground because of that. In fact, one of my students the other day in the Global, she's like, I can't believe you're 75. You're 75. Yeah, what's the problem? Yeah, but you look like 65. And I'm like, I wish, But anyway, this studying of Zen was instrumental in me not knowing or just being present in the moment of playing and being so strong because of the training and understanding what you need to do. I mean, I'm still doing it, because sometimes when I see a lot of people my age, it makes me realize that I need to keep doing it. So it's like a factor that I know that the difference between me exercising and not exercising, it's two different people, so, and you don't need to do this like whatever you do, like if you go to the gym or you swim or you work out, it's whatever floats your boat. But this for me, I've been doing this since I was 28, so that's the whole secret behind it. As far as the playing, I think being able to, it's like when you go see Bergonzi, or when you play with Bergonzi, Cheryl, he knows how to bring everybody in, like he kind of sucks you in because the guy's so strong, I mean, I remember when I first heard him with Mick Goodrick, Kaufman, and Gertz at Michael's. He had just come off the road with Dave Brubeck, and everyone was like, oh, you got to go hear this guy, Bergonzi. I was like, oh, okay. I go down there, and not since Lovano had I had anyone knock my head off like that. And, I went up to him, and his father was there, too. And I said, Jerry, how you doing? He goes, no, how you doing? Oh, this is my dad. Oh, how are you? And his father goes, hey, kid, how are you? Are you any good? Like a real Italian thing, so, but, he was instrumental. And these people like Lovano and Jerry, they know how to bring you in and they make you play better. They make you play better. You just have this mystique about them. I mean, you see that, Cheryl, when you play. I mean,
Well, both of you. I mean, actually, I I've had heard Jerry for years, and then I didn't start working with him till I moved to Boston, and I was scared because the way he played, like from his playing, it's just so ferocious, and then he's just like a sweetheart, and he's also very into meditation and astrology and very spiritual person. So you both have that in common, and you have so also for any people in Boston that listen to the show or our students, tell them about you guys have had that night at the Lily Pad for a long time. I mean, I can't think of anywhere in the world where the level of music going down in one place, and just to have that as a regular spot is incredible. I mean, it is one of the gems of Boston for sure.
I mean, yeah. If you go back to like Michael's, the Fringe, I think the most we ever had was 3 weeks off because we went from Michael's to the Lizard Lounge. No, Michael's to the Willow. Do you remember the Willow? I don't know if, Chair, you were around. Yeah. Michael's to the Willow because Brian Walkley hooked into that, and that's where my Uncle Pete lived. And I was like, wait a minute, I know this area, the Winter Hill people. It's just like right down the street my Uncle Pete was living. Then when everything went cuckoo there, we went to the Lizard Lounge. You know where that is, right? And then as we lost that gig, Gil was coming to hear us, and he's like, he said to Locke, will you come and play at our place called, it wasn't the Lily Pad, what was it before? He changed the name.
Well, there was that. Did you guys play at the Outpost, which was nearby?
Yeah, a few times, just a few. Then we went to the Lily Pad, and I think we went there a little after, like around 2002. And luckily for him, Gil having this place and really being into playing free, if it wasn't for him, there's no gig for the Fringe, really. I mean, what am I going to, you can't go to Wally's, forget about the place down in the South End. They can't hang with that, So he's keeping us alive, But
Well, just to talk about that a little bit, I mean, I have so many dear friends that studied with you, and one of the things that they always talk about is playing free, in that it might have been the first time that they experienced that showing up in your studio. And that, I guess that's also, I think, part of the Zen thing, which maybe you could address. Just, so many times I have the song prepared, or I have these licks I want to play, or yada, yada, whatever you're practicing. And you kind of put the person in a situation of like, let's listen and play. And for all of those people that experienced that, maybe it was the first time, it really changed them as musicians. So can you talk about that? Or have you ever had people really resistant, or they just felt, what do you mean just play free?
well, the big thing, and if you do ensembles, which I think you all do, when you say school, I see, to me, and don't take this wrong, but jazz education is almost like an oxymoron. So you try to teach it, but you don't teach it. And I used to yell out to the kids, stay in school, but don't go to school. And they were like, yeah. And they understood what I was talking about. Like, in other words, go to school, learn the techniques, but then drop it. So what I was doing way back in the late 70s with Scott Robinson and all these cats that were there, they would come in, and as soon as they came in, I would shut out the lights. So that, because I felt that all these students in these ensembles, they were looking at each other like, oh, what is he playing? What is she playing? Stuff like that. And then one day I went click, and man, these kids played like I never heard before. So that was a big thing. They called it the Lights Out Ensemble. So to get them, I mean, it's like a visual thing, and to get them to play past what they usually do is something I figured out, you know, what it is. It's more of an observance thing, like looking at each other and then shutting out the lights. There was totally freedom, and the difference between them playing lights on and lights off was night and day. I don't think you can do it anymore. I don't teach ensembles anymore because I'm just doing the privates. But I think that was a key factor. And just the thing I learned from the Zen, and I tell my students, is you need to learn the ability to let go. Because I don't know, you all teach, and you see these students and they're so worried about what their friends are going to think about them based off of what they're playing. So I told them, I said, well, learn how to play free, then you'll lose a lot of your friends, and it's good because then they'll leave you alone. You dig?
I love that. George, do you think over the years, have you noticed any changes in the way the students come to you and what they need?
Now,
Yeah.
oh man, it's unbelievable. It's not only musical, it's how they grow up, what's happening now, what they're going through, what we're all going through. So, you try to be real sensitive and cover all areas before, basically, when I was going to school, Charlie Mariano basically was telling me I should think about another profession. you, you can't do that. And he was right. He was right too. You can't do that anymore. Like hardcore. So you've got to be a lot more sensitivo. And the kids are cool. Like all these kids that come in, no matter what they play, they're so respectful. And so it's easy to teach. A little while ago, there was like maybe 5-8 years ago, there was a little vibe, like, oh, yeah, I play the guitar. And I told him, oh, too bad. You should play saxophone. But, they come in with a vibe and they might be like, you know what I'm talking about. They might be the heavy in Podunk, Iowa, right, or Idaho, but then they come here, and within the first 2 weeks, they realize they're not squat compared to this kid that's 2 years younger. So it's a learning experience for them. So, but I think teaching now is so much different than 10 years ago, even when I went to school. And, you probably see that anyway. So, you try to be sensitive about, there's a lot that's involved that goes beyond playing or improvising, and so you just figure out, like looking at each student, and every student is different, every lesson is different, and I'm just trying to understand what the hey is going on right now, in every genre, every moment, blah blah blah. That answer that question? Or?
Yeah, I think it did. And it seems like you got interested in it. Like, okay, like you had to kind of modify the way you did things. Do you think? Do you feel like you did?
Absolutely. I was never hardcore with the kids. Once in a while I'd get someone would come in and like vibing me. But then I would say something like, I know it's not bad, but, I'd be like, all right, dude, or do this. You wait till you go down to New York. They're going to eat you. They're going to devour you. And then they get scared. You know what I mean? And they do. When I went to New York, when I was staying with you girls, it was 95, right? It was 1995, exactly. And, these females hit me to a lot of stuff that I wasn't aware of, especially Ingrid. And Ingrid was like, yeah, all these people, they vibe me. And I told her, I said, that's because you're playing your ass off. It gets held against you in a court of law when you sound good. It doesn't matter, male or female, So I go down there and everyone's playing like bebop, trying to sound like Charlie Parker. And And I'm not going to change these cats were vibing me, like, but I just held my ground, and then, eventually 99% of the population that was in New York at that time passed through me at Berklee. So a lot of these kids were already, getting to hip to something different.
Hey,
So
George, I've talked to you about this before about the guitar and the saxophone, and I really credit you to really changing the sound of modern jazz guitar from the point of view of,
wow.
yeah, no, I'm not joking. In terms of there's only 12 tones. There's only 12 tones, and there's really so many ways around, in terms of harmony and things like that. And the way that you took the bebop language and you changed, in particular, I'm thinking about the articulation to be more legato, which is how guitar players, I think, feel natural to play. And so saying the difference between the articulation of bebop has the hard articulation often. But the way you started to express yourself is you rounded off those hard edges and you have this incredible flow. And I believe that's really, players like Kurt Rosenwinkel and Adam Rogers and all these cats. I know that you are a big influence in them. And so thank you, George.
Oh, that's news to me. But who's the guy in your department? He'd kill me because I can't remember his name.
Tim Miller.
Thank you. Timmy was with me at NEC, and he was one of the cats, a guitar person that really figured out the chromo. Like he figured that out. And that's when plus Chris Crocker was studying with me too. And I think all of this triadic chromo blah 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 is really guitar orientated because most of the guitarists they actually play it more than the saxophone people do. So but Chris studied with me for 7 years every week down in New York, and he hit me to a lot of restrictions on the guitar, but he broke through that because he wanted to make the guitar sound like a saxophone. I really credit him too, man, because I definitely tortured him, coming every week. Sometimes I'm like, Chris, get out of here. Don't come anymore. He said, no, let me come next week. Ding dong, and I had to let him in. So, but he hung, and he's got the triadic, the chromo together. He's got his thing in New York. But I really think it's a guitar thing because of all the people that have studied with me since 95 when I started to develop it, there's not too many people. I mean, Mark Turner, he's got that directional thing happening, but there's no one I can say like, wow, he really kept it going, because I don't know if when you're teaching, the chances of people remembering what you talked about once they head out the door is really slim. If they're around you, they get it, because, they know they need to be practicing. But when they split, they kind of go into their own little world. You find that at all?
I was going to ask you about this because you said a minute ago, I thought about this, how many people now who are playing have come through your studio? And I think we all find a certain amount of what you're saying. Like you don't know what people are going to take when they study with you. You don't know what they're going to take in their own thing. But I wonder, having taught so many people and then hearing them now, are you surprised sometimes about what they've taken or from you, or can you tell? Is there a little bit of you that you can hear with different players?
Well, I mean, I teach them this concept like the triadic approach with the chromo. And I mean, this thing took me 25 years to get together, Kim. So I'm not expecting them to get this overnight. And I tell them that when they come. It's like even when I teach the class, I'm trying to shove down their throat something that took 25 years to get together. So think it's like a Zen thing. If it sticks into their mind, it's up to the big guy upstairs, and if they care to keep practicing. I mean, this is something that, if you don't, I mean, I shed this a lot because if I don't practice it within a day or two, it just disappears. And, the discipline to keep consistent on practicing something with students kind of goes kind of yin yang because they get flighty about what they want to do. I tell them practice slow. They come in, they practice fast. I yell at them about practicing slow. They just can't practice slow. I was screaming at someone yesterday. Who was it? I was like, slow, slow. Play one note, bang. I remember Crocco. He, he's a good example because he would, and I love him because he got it together. He would aggravate me so much. I was like, Rocco, go stand in front of this mirror. And I set my egg timer. And I said, when that thing goes down, I want you to play one note, but don't play anything before. And he was like freaking out because he had the guitar on. And as soon as that thing went bing, he would be like, bing. And he was like, wow, that's the best note I ever played. And I'm like, hello, So, I mean, I know I keep talking about it, but he was really one of the few people that cared about, keeping the thing going. It's a lot, So, I don't know, it's like you go to, why do you play the lottery in hopes that one day you'll hit the big one, So you give it to people, you feed it, and then you see what happens. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, it does. And I love that you talked about playing slow. We in my ensemble class the other day, we put the metronome on 25 and and made everyone play for just 5 minutes. And one of the students just said, that was so painful for the first 2 minutes. And then he really settled into it and kind of fell in love with it. And he admitted something I think the rest of the class felt and didn't say, which was that first 2 minutes of discomfort of sitting with yourself and listening to yourself is so uncomfortable for people who haven't done that before that he would never have done that had we not done it together, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. I'm trying to teach them to understand the distance between the notes, not the notes, but the distance between, right? You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
when you go bong, bong, it's like to understand what happens in between one attack to the next attack, that nothingness.
And also the whole shape of it. The beginning, the middle, the end, like how the whole sound is shaped, the color of it, and the way your technique and the way you move your hands, or for you all, the way you work with your breath, the way that affects everything about the way that you sound.
Yeah, I mean, I try to get them to say, okay, let's play a ballad. All I want to hear is the melody, like do dee do 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 dee do da, just the melody. Because when I was growing up in a saxophone family, like we'd play weddings, and that's all you played was the melody. Because they weren't advanced enough. And plus, people were dancing. Then when I went to Berklee, I was like, da, do, de, boo, be, boo, ga, boo, dee, do. And within a year, they threw me out of the family band. And you know how demoralizing that was? They were like, out. Well, you're the one that wanted me to go to Berklee. Get out. And they kicked me out. But I did learn how to play the melody. And when I got into Mike Manieri's band, American Diary, he said, it was positive. He's like, I had Michael Brecker in here, and I had Bob Berg, and I had Bill Evans, but you're the only guy that plays the melody. So it was like outstanding. I worship those guys too, So I don't know. It's just trying to. I think these students feel that if you're not playing or playing a lot of notes, that you're not keeping up with the times. But I tell them the person that gets noticed is the melodic person. And with the guitar, it's a situation, and I try to tell them, remember, make the guitar sound like the saxophone, so I can make the saxophone sound like the guitar.
Well, even Mick, Goodrich used to say, "Oh, I'm all about the harmony first." But the more I sat with him and listened to his music, he was such a melody person, and then would color the melody, and we'd laugh at him because we would listen to classical guitar records together, and then we would also turn off the lights and put a drone on, and he would always go back to the melody, and then he kind of had that mind that he was always thinking of harmonic color beneath it, but there was always that melody all the way through everything.
He was totally. In fact, when the Triada came out on DVD, I was like, who can I give this to that'll really knock me out? So I walk up there and I say, Mick, here's my new DVD, Traumatic Approach. Listen to it and tell me how you like it. This thing kills me. And I'm saying, this thing kills me. He goes, yeah, but that's how you know it's good. And I'm like, duh. I go, what do you mean? He said, when you can't even play it, And he was like that way. And I remember playing with Jimmy Moshe's big band the first time Mick heard me. I get up, I play a solo, I go cuckoo. And, and Mick says to me, so out, but why? And I looked at him and I said, why not? And that was the beginning. He was great because he was cut and dry. Back then you could still, and a lot of those players really decided if they were going to hang off with you based off of how you played. If they liked the way you played, if you were in, if they didn't dig the way you were doing, but you were out. And two of the scariest nights for me, or three, with the Fringe at the Willow, was when Joe Viola came down to hear us, and then Jimmy Moshe came another time, and then Lee Konitz. And it was one of the few times that I was actually like kind of trembling, but they loved it, So it just gave me the, insight to keep going. But, in those days, people were pretty cut and dry about how it goes. So, I don't know.
Hey, Ben, do you want to jump in and ask? So, George, Ben always asks a question for the students, and I think it's a good time if you want to go in there.
Okay. What do you think the students here at Berklee should be asking that they're not thinking of?
They should be asking? Wow, that's deep.
Yeah, like what should they ask and they don't know that they should ask?
Well, I think, like, every time when I get into class, the kids don't talk to me. Like, they're so, like, afraid to say the wrong thing, I was like, ask me some questions, I think they should just ask, whatever they're feeling at that moment, like whether it's musical, non-musical. I try to get them to come out of their shell because they get introvert, and if you get introvert, it's going to affect your playing. So to be open. And I'll never forget one of these kids from somewhere. He said, look, he's a foreign guy, and the way he said it was so beautiful. He said, I just want to know, Mr. Garzone, how you do that? How do you do this? So, he's asking like this general question. So I think, man, I tell the kids, ask questions, but because any question is valid, what's the meaning of life? Why do I play music? And I always tell them, I feel that it was decided by a higher force that you agree with that, Kim? Wow, dig you.
I do.
Wow,
I do.
that's deep. I mean, it was decided by a higher force that you're going to play music. And I always tell the kids you should be happy that you're at Berklee, your parents are sending you, because I had students where, my parents are doctors and they didn't want me to come. And I used to tell them, fight them. And that's why I'm here. I said, no matter what, you want to come. And, they go through a lot of different things, but I really think it's decided. I mean, by a higher force, who's going to play, where they're going to go. I mean, look at me meeting Joe Lovano. I mean, at that point, we were two opposites in terms of levels of playing. But the guy was so cool. I think he could see where I was going to go down the line, and he brought me into the family. But I mean, as far as that question, like I tell the kids, ask questions. And Ben, when I was a hippie, I had hair as long as that. I know you don't believe it, but I did.
I love that. I think, I mean, George, don't you think in a certain way, if you believe that it's a vocational thing, that you have to do music or you're meant to do it, in a way it helps take some of the pressure off. Because if you're going to do it anyway, if that's who you are, then maybe it helps you if you do feel a little intimidated or introverted. You just may as well meet the other people who are going to be with you as you're doing it.
Intimidation is good.
Right.
It makes a man or woman out of you. It's good to be afraid. See, like a lot of people are afraid to look into the face of danger. But I grew up in Boston, so you know what I'm talking about? I mean, everybody talks about New York, but forget about it. Growing up here was like pretty scary, Cheryl's laughing. No, it is. It was, I mean, think about this place in the 60s. I mean, this place was deep, So you understand how to deal with people, what's happening, what isn't happening. And for me, growing up in an Italian family, my mother was like, she was fierce. She's like, I don't like the way you play. I sent you to 4 years of Berklee, and this is what you sound like with the Fringe. I want my money back. And I had to give it to her. So that's how she was. But growing up like that, I think, I realized she was prepping us for the real world, So, I mean, she could spot a phony a mile away, and she taught us that, like how to see into people. And that's what I try to, tell the kids, especially, when you get out there, you go down to New York trying to get gigs. Don't let these people let you play for $50, which we do, But I don't know. I think you do. I mean, the reason I taught at Berklee is so I could do whatever I want, and have that base. I mean, I never wanted to teach. I didn't. I went to Berklee, then I went out on the road with Tom Jones, and we're flying around in a private jet. My whole history in Las Vegas, blah blah blah, and I thought like, wow, this is it. Then at the end of the tour, they dumped me back in Boston, and it was either play weddings or teach or both, and so I decided to do both until, I figured out how to get it to that point. And that's what I try to tell the students. Figure out, what your focal point is. And if you got to do things around that, you do that until you get to that point. One of the biggest things for me was the day I let go of weddings, because I was playing weddings with the family when I was 12. I mean, I was strong enough to hang with them. So by the time I was 40, I was like ready to freak out. And, it was really dark, so I stopped it. I mean, it's good if you need the money and you can hang, but by that time I was pretty negative. So.
Yeah, but George, I mean, you say all the thing like, you didn't want to teach, but yet you have been such a major influence on every modern saxophone player that's come through our program and in the world too. I mean, all the stuff you've done everywhere. So in some way, that's just like the free improv and all the improvisation called to you. Maybe you were reluctant, but teaching was calling to you too.
Yeah, but sure, something I didn't know, because I never wanted to teach. I mean, think about playing with Tom Jones, living in Las Vegas, hanging out with Elvis, Frank Sinatra. I'm like, wow. I mean, these cats were like normal people. Like Elvis, he almost stole my girlfriend, wife, ex-wife, and I wish he did, but no, I shouldn't say that. But anyway, I mean, I looked when we were in Caesar's Palace one day, and I look, and she's there, and someone has their arm around. I'm like, what the hell? Rah, 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 rah. You know, I can't see in the dark, and then I look, and I realize it was Elvis. You know, so growing up with, it was commonplace. Like these guys, Sammy Davis Jr., they would come and hear us, you know, and hey, how you doing? Blah blah blah. So I was like, wow, I finally hit the big time. Well, it was momentary because when they, dropped me off at Boston, there was no Elvis, no Tom Jones. And luckily, Rich Appleman, who was the first Fringe bass player, he got me in. And I always tell the teachers, like, remember this, when I started in 1975, I was making $5 an hour. And I was happy to have that $5 an hour. But on the flip side, you could do a complete grocery shopping for $25, so it kind of balanced off. So, no, the school was always good to me because, no one ever questioned right down the line, Lee Burke, Roger Brown. No one ever said, hey, this stuff you're teaching is a little cuckoo. In fact, do we need to stop pretty soon?
You keep going. Keep going.
No, once I stop blabbing. No, I have
No, you're good.
Okay.
Yeah.
So one time I saw the accreditation board was here in town. So I'm walking down the street to the other building and I see Roger Brown coming with the accreditation board. And I'm like, oh no, right? So I couldn't turn around and bolt the other way because he caught me. He's like, George, come here. So he's like, I want to introduce you. This is George Garzone. This is the accreditation. And we consider him our mad scientist of Berklee. Once I heard that, I knew I was cool, So they never really, no one ever said to me, wow, this stuff you're teaching is a little crazy off the wall. And that's how I knew, because of them letting me continue to do this, that it was cool, So
I think it's important at a place like this because I think you have to have the whole gamut. You have to have all of the fundamental things, and then you really have to see where you're going to push it and see that that's all part of the fundamental.
Kim, most places, but there was a lot of, this kind of thing, and not there, but just in general. But I just stuck to my guns because it's like I was listening. I mean, for me, let me just say this: where did this triadic approach come from? I think it came from playing in George Russell's orchestra, the Lydian Chromatic big band. And when I was teaching at NEC, he liked the way I played. But even though I was a Berklee guy, he's like, Garzone, I want you in my band. I'm like, really? So we did the African game. You remember that big commission he got? And I didn't realize till later, just being around this guy, he was responsible for helping me to understand the freedom in music. And I'm not really a rocket scientist, but I think this Lydian chromatic concept swirled in my ear, and I was able to come up with this approach of just openness, chromo, triad. So he was really instrumental in helping me without realizing, because, everything I've done all my life has always been by ear, I'm really an ear player, and I think I try to get, the students to feel like that too. It's okay to play wrong notes. Check this out. Here's flat 9 on 1 minor. And I yell out, flat 9 is the new 1. Yeah, and I show them how to do it. If you run a whole tone scale from the minor third, F, G, A, B natural, C sharp, then you can go to the flat 9 and you've tonalized it. And these little things help me to realize that you could play any note over any chord anytime, and here's how it goes. But you know what I mean? That's why you need to be able to back that up, it's the law of relativity. You know what I mean? Don't repeat yourself. You're borrowing from the 12-tone row. It's pretty simple, and it takes a lot to make the kids believe that, because when they come from the Midwest and the teacher is like, okay, do this, don't do it, Ben, don't do that, don't play that flat nine because that's wrong. You know, it's like they get this thing, it's like a religion. Then they come here and I'm telling them like, yeah, play any note and it doesn't matter. Here's how it goes. You know, like at first they're like, no. I don't want to mention names, but I had the best of them in there, and these sax players were telling me, no, no. And I was like, don't aggravate me, no. By the fourth week, yes. You know, this is just like, you know, just to convince them that, you know, you need to move on. I mean, playing straight ahead is great. I do it all the time. I love playing straight ahead. In fact, sometimes if I play a bebop lick at the Fringe, the kids are asking me the next day, oh, we heard you play a bebop lick. And I said, what's the problem? You know? So anyway, anything?
Hey Cheryl, as we're like kind of coming to the end of our coffee today, what's on your mind for George?
I'm so happy you came and visited our podcast. You have just so much to share, and you've contributed so much to improvised music and Berklee. So we thank you for coming here and just spending some time and just doing your thing.
Can I say one more thing and then I'll jump?
Yes,
For the
say.
for the teachers of the world, my idea of a good teacher is a teacher who teaches the student how to teach himself. Remember, I'm not your father or your mother. Yabish?
Capiche. Yeah, I love
All
it.
right, let me get out of here before I
Well,
get.
wait.
All
Yeah, but
right.
let me tell everybody though, listen, if you're in Boston Monday night at the Lily Pad, that's when the Fringe plays. They play late, so take a nap, get there and be ready to hear some great notes, a lot of great notes and a lot of out notes and beautiful notes.
I like the nap part myself.
You might have to. Well, you got to
Yeah,
be ready. You got to be ready to
that's
listen.
right.
You got to
That's
have your
right.
ears open because you're going to be listening hard, is what you're going to be doing.
Um,
Thanks for being here, George. We really
no,
appreciate you.
my pleasure.
Um,
Sometimes I wish I played the guitar, but
you're an honorary. You're an
really,
honorary. We're glad to have. Yeah, I mean, listen, John Laporta had the idea to start the guitar department at Berklee. And
really,
so, yeah, it was John Laporta. That was his idea.
wow.
And so we always feel like all of you are honoraries if you'd like to be.
Well,
So
That's
we're happy to take
no,
you.
that's interesting. So there,
Yeah,
until he said that, there wasn't a
there was
guitar.
no guitar department. Yep, it was his
Bill
idea.
Levitt, no, Bill Levitt, I knew him well, and
Mm-hmm.
he,
Yep. Yeah. So and we honor John with the Laporta with an award every year because he had that vision and took a chance on us as guitarists. So anytime, you're always welcome anytime. And
one more deal. He used to yell at me all the time walking down the street. Gosh, take that out. Make sure you play crazy. Don't let them pull you back inside. And I was like, okay, John, don't yell at me. Corner of Mass Ave, boy, I can still see it too, you know. And Charlie Mariano with Pierce and he would stop the band and say, guys, you better think about another profession. I mean, Pierce remembers that too. I mean, that's how hardcore it was. But all right, on that note,
all right. On that note, everyone, thank you for joining us today. Thank you, Cheryl Bailey. Thanks, Ben Cody. Thank you, George Garzone. Now, the four of us, we're going to hang for a little while longer, but for everyone who's listening, thank you so much, and we will be with you all on the next Coffee Talk.
okay.